Hi guys, welcome to the Grapplers Academy. Bonafide PT, coached by Si. We had a bit of a hiatus last week, didn't we?
Yeah.
I was dying.
And I'm just a general criminal.
But yeah, we had quite a bit going on in the grappling scene, didn't we? Musa Mecci, Dante Leon joined Daisy Fresh.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to fill me in on the weekly roundup because I've not paid attention to jiu-jitsu that much this week.
Yeah, to be fair, I've seen Gordon Ryan had his exhibition match against, I think it was UFC welterweight, and Flow Grappling advertised it as kind of like the king is back, Gordon Ryan's back, but nothing against the guy he went against. He's clearly a great fighter, but he's not a full-time grappler, and UFC welterweight versus somebody who walks around at 240 pounds.
Yeah.
There's a noticeable difference there.
It's interesting to see if he's coming back to regular competition, but I don't see where the value in him, aside from, he probably doesn't need the competition experience.
No.
He might need to get on the mat and just fight against people who he's not fought against before, just for a different look. But the reality of the people who are actually going to be posing him a threat on a high level competition, he's probably faced them all already, or used to train with them, or coming back in and just doing a match that's like, you can pretty much guarantee that he's going to win. I don't see the value in that, aside from just maybe making a bit of money off flow.
To be fair, it's probably there for the paycheck and low risk. Like, go in there and from what I've not watched the fight, seen a few highlights, and he didn't look threatened from what I saw.
The other argument could be that I don't know whether he's got a new instructional coming out, but if he comes out and does a match where he can demonstrate some of his moves that he's doing for this instructional in live practice, and he's like, look, I just fucked this UFC guy up with my new back-taking series. Here's my new back-take series, go and buy it.
To be fair, with all of his little minions, all he's got to do is just put a picture up on his Instagram saying new instructional out on this specific topic, and he's got guaranteed sales already anyway.
They're good though.
Yeah.
Well, and I tell you who else is a good teacher, from what I've seen more and more of, is Nicky Ryan.
Yeah. Well, come on after. Didn't Nicky Rod say about in the interview about Nicky Ryan's the future of jiu-jitsu? He's kind of like a younger, newer version of Danaher, which for someone who's worked closely alongside Danaher is quite a big compliment, I'd say. And I've not seen anything personally as of yet, but I can actually see that happening. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the B team come up. There's scrolling through the Reddit BJJ forum, someone put in a genuine question saying, I want to debate and join whether New Wave or B Team, any recommendations? And he's like, I'm not an active competitor, I've not really got a desire to compete, I just want to train and learn and progress. And somebody put a really good explanation of the difference between the two of them, and it was basically saying B Team is a competitive team tailored towards getting you ready for competition. It's not really, this is the kind of me reading between the lines, but it's not really ideal for a beginner to go to. It's like, go there with experience and a clear goal of competing in mind, and that's going to be the right team for you. They will get you there, they will tighten things up, tweak your game, and make you a better player. They were saying that New Wave is essentially a new gym. So they were saying that it's primarily blues and white belts, but there's no initial push or pressure to compete if you're part of the team. If you want to compete, they have a way, like the program's done in a way to sort of tailor you towards that and prepare you for competition. But if you're just wanting to train, they've also catering for that as well, and it's Gordon and John teaching. Didn't hear anything about Tolan though in the comment.
It must be focusing back on his
MMA
career.
Yeah.
Interesting concept, isn't it? I wonder what it's like to be in a gym where there's no white and blue belts and purple belts at the bottom of the ladder. Be weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like 20 plus guys on the mat, and the worst person on the mat's probably a good purple belt.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a boiling pot out of talent.
Yeah.
Be very interested to see how that team evolves over the next coming 12 months, I'd say.
The rate of learning would be probably a lot quicker because there's less time explaining the basic concepts and fundamentals of positions to like people who are brand new into the sport. I don't know, it'd be weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Actually, you find it, would you prefer that, or would you like to be in the more traditional room of having the whites and the blue belts there? I guess the answer would be, depends if you were planning on competing heavily or not.
I think it's a tough one, really. Like, I think with the objective of competing and becoming a better athlete, I'd have to say the B team room I'd rather join. New wave is something I'd probably go to if I was earlier on in my journey, or if I didn't really want to compete. But I certainly think you're going to become a better athlete and a more, probably say a fitter competitor in the B team room.
I mean, even if you don't really have any plans on competing, if you can train there and they'll let you train there if you're not a competitor, it's got to be better to train in the gym where you get the more competitive aspects and details of the training. Everything that they're doing, it looks quite like well detailed, but also the sequences are very specific and quite complex.
Yeah.
And it'd be really difficult for somebody coming in who like kind of barely understands how to frame and shrimp and that sort of stuff to tie in these ideas. But like what they are doing looks really good, and from what I've seen, like the way that they're sequencing stuff together and putting it into action with the rolling as well looks great.
Yeah.
And the talent that they've got there teaching is ridiculous. Like,
oh yeah.
Where else can you go in the world really where you've got like 5-6 of the top active competitors who also seem like they're actually really good at teaching as well?
There's probably only one other place I can think of, which is Atos. But I wouldn't say they're all teaching.
Yeah.
But I can see in maybe 12 months to 2 years, Legion being up there in that sort of category. And do you know what? We've got to give credit where it's due as well. Some of the top Gracie Barra gyms, they've probably got a similar room, but I don't think it's going to be as productive as the B team. I think the top 2 rooms in the world at the moment would probably be B team and Atos. But saying that, give New Wave 5 years and they're going to have a room full of browns, purples and black belts. Team
tournament, Atos versus the B team, and then Legion versus New Wave, and then they win a semi-finals and then go into a final. And then Gordon and Andre can fight.
Yeah. Do you know what though? I'm going to go with personal sort of bias because I'm a big Galval fan. I do see Atos taking B team because of how deep their pool talent is. Like you've got the Rotolas, you've got Hinger, you've got Kanan, Torres, Galvao, Mika Galvao. You've got plus all the other names that I'm obviously forgetting.
They're ridiculous.
There's a big room there, whereas
say Barbosa.
Barbosa as well, yeah. I can see those coming out on top across all, but I've been keeping an eye on Legion as well, and their pool of coaches, like if you see, is it J Flow Judo?
Yeah.
He seems to be spending a lot of time. I don't know whether he's an actual coach there, but some of the stuff that he's putting up on his page is really good.
Keenan's judo coach, isn't he?
Yeah. I think that's going to be a great room as well. I think if I was ever out that way, I'd have to visit both Atos and Legion, and
Well, the other two are in Texas, aren't they?
Yeah, because if I was in Texas, I think I'd more likely sway towards going to the B team.
Yeah.
Like, whereas California, I'd be torn. Texas,
versus
I'm
San Diego.
swaying. I think the inner turmoil between Texas will probably corrupt the team and cause issues there.
Well, speaking of kid as well, I went back and watched the episode of the Matt Burn podcast that they put out in July. It's quite an old one, but I think it's the last one that they put out. We were talking about it earlier on in the week, weren't we? And there's some good points that came up off that as well. Josh was talking about some of the competition scene and how like that's filtering on down as well, and they were talking about the splitting division between gi and no gi again,
Yeah.
and which one's kind of winning the war at the moment. And Keenan was just going on about his same thing about they kind of just splitting more and more into two different sports.
Yeah.
And the other thing that they made a good point of as well regarding the competition scene is like, and it's probably more true for the UK than the US, I don't know, but they were talking about most competitors, most weekends are competing on smaller shows that aren't the IBJJF ones, which is definitely true in the UK because what do we get, like 2 IBJF competitions a year?
Oh, it's ridiculous.
And
considering how much membership is, they've probably got quite a lot of members over there. Needs what they get.
One, maybe 2 in London if you're lucky, and then the next closest one you've got to go to Dublin.
Yeah.
It's no surprise that all the smaller competitions are making up the big bulk of most people's training, and especially for white and blue belts as well, because they're not going to want to pay 130 quid or whatever it is for a membership.
And then paying the same for entry to the tournament.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But then you got companies like Grappling Industries, who I'm pretty sure they've got a tournament within the UK every month.
Is it?
Or it's a frequent. Like I'm constantly getting emails of. It's either every month or every other month there's something from Grappling Industries.
Yeah.
And speaking of tournaments, well, the British Open just announced the no-gi date with the 18th of December. So that should be really one to watch out for. I think personally I might go for that one as well. So
it's like 7 weeks?
I think so. Enough time to get the old derby down and get in shape.
What weight are you going to compete at?
See, I'm starting debating 97, but then depending on where my weight's at 4 weeks out, I may adjust. But yeah, I think 97's what I'm aiming for.
Stay close to the 100 kilo club.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
Did you listen to that podcast?
Yeah, I listened to it quite a while back. I'd have to go back over it to refresh, but I really enjoy listening to their stuff because they bring up some really good points, and I quite like their dynamic as well.
There was an interesting thing that we were talking about, and it kind of spans off on a couple of different points, but they were talking about how actual jiu-jitsu practitioners for the most part versus how many people are competing as a percentage, and they were saying that it's probably less than 1% of people who do jiu-jitsu are competing, definitely, and then an even smaller percentage of those people actually watch jiu-jitsu competitively as well. And Keenan was kind of basically making the point that the way that the jiu-jitsu business as a whole for gyms is skewed is like people are putting too much focus on the competition side of things, and it does need to be there to kind of accelerate and growth and stuff. But if you're looking at it from a business point of view, then really you should be looking at it like it's a practitioner sport. He was kind of making the comparison that it was like yoga a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Which is a really valid point. There's a couple of things that I've kind of disagree to counter the argument that it's like yoga or like a yoga studio.
Because you don't have yoga world championships.
Yeah, well, it's like combative yoga, isn't it? I'm sure there probably is yoga world championships, but loads like probably almost everybody that you've spoken to at some point in their life has either tried yoga or said that they fancy doing it.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to, like with jiu-jitsu, get people in and get traction with it, so people might kind of flit in and flit out. But I think jiu-jitsu much more so than yoga, like to get to the point where it's actually fun and enjoyable to do and you want to come multiple times a week, you've got to kind of stick with it a little bit and get a certain level of skill, because at the beginning you're pretty shit and you're going to spend a lot of time getting smashed, and unless you're a psychopath, you're not going to enjoy it.
Well, then I guess that's like depends on how you're sort of brought into the sport then, because like there are some gyms where they don't have beginners class and you kind of threw in the deep end with the advanced players, and depending on the culture in the club, they're either going to show you the way or they're going to show you the door.
Yeah, and it's
in
very much personality driven, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whether you're going to stick that out or not. Because some people will just want to assert their dominance on you if they're not like, just like an aggressive blue belt or something like that. And it's like, motherfucker, this is the pecking order.
Yeah.
But I think, and there's definitely an element and right thing about doing a beginner's class or a beginner's course and giving people those fundamentals in a controlled environment. But then it's that transition of how do you get them into, this is what jiu-jitsu is in the main sparring of the class, this is how you got to roll with a bit more intensity, because I think that barrier between like being a really controlled environment to going into a main class and probably getting smashed for your first time is going to be a bit of an eye-opener, and maybe even more of an eye-opener than if you'd just gone in at that point in the beginning.
I guess maybe that's on the coaches and knowing the room, so every gym has the handful of players where you wouldn't put a newer member with them, not because of any other reason other than they have one pace.
Yeah.
And it's not, and for somebody who's newer to that class, it's not a very welcoming pace for them. And you've got the other players who just as experienced, but know how to communicate with less experienced players, and also how to spar with less experienced players while making it beneficial for both. And then I think it's also on the newer player. It's a bit intimidating to do so, but sort of say to them, introduce yourself and let them know that you're fairly new. It's something that I always encourage, like my newer players to come when they're coming from the sort of beginners classes to the advanced classes, of let your partners know where you're at, let them know your experience level. If you're feeling lost in the role, stop and ask. Especially if it's your first week or two in the newer classes. Like, it may be annoying for the more experienced players, but they need to approach it in the sense of you were there at one point, so remember what it's like. And also, the better they get, that's another training partner for you to have those roles with down the line. Because you only really need to, I'd say, carry the newer players for the first 1 to 2 weeks while they get used to the intensity. And it's also knowing how to teach them, so not being overly technical with your explanation of, here's this frame and you put this here because of X, Y, Z, but then also they can do this A, B, C, and going too far down the rabbit hole. Whereas, oh, you're stuck in this position, let's get this frame in here, stops them from being able to put pressure in, and here's how you get out. Just be sort of really like simplistic with your explanations, like you explain it to a child, and then as they get more experience, that's when they're gonna probably want to know the whys and the hows as opposed to the what.
Yeah.
And then building that knowledge from there, because you can teach the exact same technique in an advanced class as you would in a beginner's class, but the details will be different. So, like we were talking about mount escapes before we started filming, and the escape is exactly the same as what you teach in the fundamentals. Here's how to escape and stay safe in mounts. But then in the advanced class, you're going to go into the smaller, minute details with the explanation of why they're doing that, to give them a greater understanding, rather than here's what you do and here's how to do it. And then once you can do it very well, then you can go into the hows and the what. Like, here's the why of what you're doing. Here's the small detail that would have been lost on you 6 weeks ago, but it's going to make more sense now because you've got reps and you've seen some success. And now with this detail, you're going to start to understand your success with it.
Yeah, like painting a picture almost, isn't it? You know, like you need those big broad strokes at the beginning.
Yeah.
Kind of don't really look like a painting at first, but then you can start to see the shape come out, and then you go back in later and fill in with all the smaller details to make it look a little bit more like what you want. But yeah, going into details with people at the beginning who don't even understand the concept of the bridge. And trying to teach them. And I think people fall into that trap as well when they're maybe a little bit more experienced. They want to try and like give the kind of show that they know a little bit more than what the person that they're training with knows, and they'll try and be overly technical. But really, all you need to know is like put a frame in, like stick your knee in there, and then you can carry on doing the roll as well, because they might only just be stuck at that one bit. And like, let's say you've got the back and you're choking them out, and you know, you kind of just got your arm around the neck, but you're not trying to finish it, and they're kind of trying to fight at your elbow like everybody always does. Just go like, grab my hand. And then, oh, right, cool, now we're done. And now they might know an escape and they could do that, but they're just stuck in that one thing. It doesn't need a whole get this angle and all this sort of stuff. It's fun, but like I say, definitely you want to try and build as many training partners as you can for the longevity of it. And also, like if you're training with the less experienced or younger ones as well, try and be nice to them now, because when you're old and if you've been horrible to them, they will smash you.
But then we've also had that theory of smash them from the beginning, and then when they are older and have the athletic abilities over you, they kind of look at you going, I know what you can do, and I'm just gonna play the game that he wants to play.
Past trolls.
But going back to the detail stuff as well, you've also got to look at, sometimes they don't care of the why. They just want to know the what to do, how to do it, and that's enough for them. They don't care to know those smaller details. So you're wasting your own time and their time, especially when it's drilling. Like, you don't need to go into the intricate explanations. It's kind of like, save that for when they're further down the journey, so then the understanding the whys going to have more impact on them.
I think, I see it a lot in PT as well, and coaching just in general. Like some people will overly think everything and think that there needs to be a lot more technical explanation for what's going on. Whether that's from lifting or nutrition or whatever, and it applies perfectly to jiu-jitsu as well. Like, it's all personality types, and somebody will want to overthink it, and like it's the same in a jiu-jitsu ring. You might be rolling with somebody new, and they'll try and stop you and be like, what exactly is going on here? How are you able to get me? And you're like, listen, we'll roll now, and then we can have a chat about it afterwards. But now the more important thing for you to do is roll and get the experience of it. You don't need to be stopping every 2 seconds, because that's not going to help you. And then, like, on the other hand of it, you'll get the other side of the coin of people who just want to smash. And then, you know, like, mate, calm down, you're doing it wrong, do this. And then you're trying to teach them how to defend the rear naked choke that you've got them in, and they're just spazzing out. And they need to take a leaf out of the other people's book, and vice versa. There's like a happy middle ground of somebody who asks enough but still wants to go.
Because then that's where you can, let's say in a class where you'd show them something, you walk the room, and if someone's not quite getting it, you go in and sort of, you can speak it more in their language, so they might need that why for their learning. So then that's when you can go and spend a bit more time with them and give them that why, and then that's going to help their understanding. And then you walk over, someone's not doing it but they don't care about the why, they just want to know the how, and then you'll be like, okay, do it this way, correct them, and they're like, oh yeah, that makes more sense. And then you go to somebody else and they're doing it really well, but they still want to know the why, and you go to somebody else and they're kind of like, I'm getting it, that's fine. And then as they do, if they're more experienced, you can then say to them, once you've escaped, say it's side control escape, once you've escaped, ad-lib a counter-attack with the more experienced players, and it gets them chaining their attacks and movements and things like that. So it's always different, like horses for courses, and each coach is going to coach differently. But yeah, one thing I'm sure you found the same as well, where it's kind of like, you give the big picture first, and then you go around and fill in the gaps where people need it.
You know, like I say, everybody's completely different, but that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu, and that's why they keep turning up and doing it. I think like the other sort of person that you get on the mat as well, who is the more experienced person, on the mat, like they're probably an upper belt, and it'll be those questions of like, what if the guy does this?
Yeah.
Or like, what if you post here or something like that? And then, when you're rolling, other people are listening. If you've got higher belts on the mat and you can see that the coach is going through with them in a little bit more detail, they'll be those eyes peering over like, what are they doing after that?
Oh yeah.
And
I've had it before where people have stopped rolls to come over and listen in onto what's being spoken.
Go roll!
Yeah. Secret technique.
This is for later. Yeah. That was good. I like the different dynamic of stuff on the mat, and that kind of ties in nicely full circle with what we were talking about before, about being in the gym with all the purple belts and above, and also having the white and the blue belts. I think, and it presents a different sort of dynamic from a teaching point of view as well, doesn't it? Aside from just being a student. Like if you're going into a room where you've got only advanced people, you have to think about stuff differently. It's like, you can teach the points that you know that are important and go off the assumption that they already know all the basics. The reality of those, some people who are kind of in the middle is like, they'll kind of know the basics a bit, but they'll forget some important stuff. And you might say something that's a little bit more basic and they're like, shit, like, I'm not doing that properly, and be a bit of an eye-opener for them. But, you're teaching brand new white belts especially, or, people who've been doing it like, they've not got the techniques dialed down yet, and you really have to break down the basic mechanics of what's going on and figure out different ways of explaining it to people. And as a coach, that's fun as well.
Oh, 100%.
There's definitely a balance. Like, I don't think I'd want all of my time to be spent doing that. It's nice to go through those more advanced concepts as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, both dynamics are fun.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Can you imagine a beginner's course at the B team? I don't.
Heel hook inversions. Do you know what? It won't surprise me if they released or they had a series of classes which is, here's the fundamentals of our club. So it's kind of like, we spend a lot of time in these positions. If you're inexperienced in these positions, we'd recommend coming to XYZ classes.
Who do you think teaches the beginner's course?
It'd have to be one of the most, I reckon it would be like, because it wouldn't necessarily be beginners, it would be fundamental concepts for advanced players. So I'd probably even go into Nicky Ryan or Craig Jones for that. I've not seen much of the others teaching. Speaking of that, another Danaher black belt left New Wave to join B Team.
Oh really?
I can't remember his name, but I think he's fairly accomplished, and in his statement when he was sort of leaving it was kind of like, my time here has come to an end, it's time for me to rejoin my friends. So I was like, some interesting language used there. It kind of points towards a lot of people's theories behind the whole break.
It was interesting, they were talking about that sort of thing and this is before the B Team and all that sort of stuff, talking about that on the Matt Byrne podcast as well.
Yeah.
Like creating a bad rift in the gym, and a lot of people might just go and set up their own thing. I think Keenan was alluding to what he did with just going and opening up Legion, but it is a good example.
I think that's when he explained like how him and Galvao sort of split in it.
No, it wasn't on that one, but I have.
Might be in the next episode, yeah. I think I think there's one more after yours.
Is there?
That what you got up to.
Okay, I'll get caught up with that then, because I've only seen that one. Anyone else? More of the Matt Byrne podcast?
Yeah.
Put them out.
Keenan, Josh.
And then we could do a breakdown of it afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, good time to wrap it up.
Yep.
This is Coach by Size, Bonafide PT, with the Grapplers Academy. Make sure you hit us up on all the social medias, drop us a comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you've got anything that we want us to cover, or you disagree with some of our opinions, drop us a comment below and we'd love to discuss it.